Welcome to the Holy Spirit's Curriculum of Joy podcast. My name is Wanaka Oberhuber, and I'm your host. My guest today is Evan Moulton. Hi,
Hello.
wonderful that you're here.
Oh, thank you. Wonderful to be here.
Yeah, let's start with a big question. How did you get to see the world the way you do now?
Well, you want the short answer or the really long answer?
The really long answer.
All right. Well, I had a bad childhood, which is always a good start to true spirituality. And by the time I was in middle school, I guess I was basically suicidal because there was no love at home, and the town I lived in was very violent, and I was a peaceful, loving, honest sort of person just naturally, and so I didn't feel like I fit in at home or in the town, and I wondered why I was there. I didn't know what was wrong, but I knew this place didn't make any sense to me. And by this place, I mean beyond that, just life itself. I didn't understand why I was here with the sensitivities I had and the world as it appeared to be. And so I graduated high school early, got out of that town, went to a nice hippie town, Boulder, Colorado, and went to college and tried to get all of that out of me. Uh, but conditioning is conditioning. And by the time I was 26, I I just didn't see much point in any of it. And then a friend of mine pointed out the personal development program, and I figured I had nothing to lose. So I went ahead and went to that program, and they were teaching how to reprogram the mind. And at the time, I didn't know any better. I thought, okay, fine. Everyone's saying if I get what I want, I'll be happy. And that I could get what I want basically by doing so many affirmations that I brainwashed myself to believe it. And so I did that. And I mastered that. And I got to the point where my previously negative, confused mind was now always positive, always clear. But what it wasn't was silent. And so I was able to manifest anything I wanted simply by sitting at home by myself and feeling and believing that it was already so. And then I would walk out in the world, and it was almost like magic that people would just hand me what I believed without me ever having to ask. But I noticed something, which was getting everything I wanted didn't actually make me satisfied. So I had grown up never getting what I wanted, and then I had gotten good at manifesting and basically brainwashing myself, which then had people read off me and hand me the things I thought I wanted. And so I noticed, like, okay, the previous negative, confused experience that I thought was me for 26 years, that obviously wasn't me because now I'm positive and clear. So that wasn't me. But then it was clear that this isn't me either. This collection of thoughts that I had uh, replaced the other thoughts with. And so, because I was in the martial arts and all that kind of stuff, I was aware of a concept that they had, or not even, I guess, to the masters, it wasn't a concept, it was an actual experience. But to the people who hadn't experienced it was a concept that they called Mushin, which is empty mind, which was basically in the actual moment, you have no thought. And in basketball or something, you would call it being in the flow or, you know, And so I gave away everything I owned. I just put everything I owned out in front of the garage, made a sign that said garage sale free. And it was a Wednesday in the afternoon with no advertising, just that sign out by the bigger street. And everything I owned to that point in my life was gone in 10 minutes. And I got in my car and I drove to California. And I figured, okay, negative, confused mind didn't work. Positive, orderly, clear mind didn't work. Empty mind is what I need to find. And so I went to a place there, and it turned out they were more about manifesting also. The only difference was instead of the group I had learned manifesting from didn't use the word God while doing it. So I went to California and was hanging out with a group that used the word God, but was still just interested in manifesting what they wanted. And so I was looking for someone to teach me how to actually empty the mind, not just reprogram the mind, because I had already mastered that. And somehow a gentleman came and he was teaching a class called Soul Processing, Brother Tete, and he was teaching how two people could help each other go back and clear meanings that they had picked up mostly in childhood. And, but there was nobody else in the class that really wanted to do the work. But for me, it was everything. I had given away everything. I had left everything. Actually, the gentleman that was teaching me the manifesting had offered me $2 million a year to train his trainers in manifesting. But I knew that what I was looking for wasn't down that road, so I just walked away. And so when I was in California, I had learned how to do that with another person help processing. And so what I did is I went home and I laid on the floor until I figured out how to actually clear a belief or clear a memory or clear a meaning. Not just replace it, but actually have nothing in its place. Basically, absolution. And then I laid there for a month and a half and went through my entire life and cleared absolutely every belief I had, including not just the negative ones, but the beliefs uh, that I owned anything, all the positive beliefs, because it felt so good to just have nothing in the space where I previously had a thought or a belief or a meaning. And the freedom and bliss just got more and more, and I felt lighter and lighter until one day I had nothing left to surrender, nothing left to give up but the concept of existence itself, and that I had any purpose in life whatsoever. And I let that go. And then I was driving somewhere, and my mind went absolutely silent. It had previously gone silent for moments between letting things go, and those moments were getting longer and longer. But now that I had surrendered absolutely everything, it was just pure blissful silence, and yet my body moved, and I was able to drive a car, and I was able to talk to people, but with no thought process whatsoever. And I heard the words coming out of my mouth as they were coming out. I didn't know what they were going to be. There was no sense of relation. There's just this blissful oneness, and it expressed itself. And and it was so clear. It was like it when it first came, it came with a little message like, "There's nothing you need to do. You're already perfect." And then silence. And yet I went into a social occasion and talked with people and hugged people and everything with no thought whatsoever. And I came home, fell asleep in bliss. The next day I got up and my hand just started writing, and I wrote what turned out to be a workshop that I called the Love Experience. And it was showing people how to experience absolute unconditional love that has nothing to do whatsoever with relations. And it was just experiential. And then I was compelled to do that, and I walked around Los Angeles for years, just in absolute bliss, even walking through what people would consider dangerous neighborhoods, and it was not never a problem. And from there, then I hadn't read Course in Miracles, I hadn't read Goldsmith, I hadn't read all those things because I had just gone straight from personal development to complete willingness to do the work. So I didn't really need a religion or a group or anything. I just went straight to the surrender, or what I understand they call forgiveness in A Course in Miracles, which is getting to the point where you're absolutely clear it never happened, that it never was a thing, that is totally absolved. And that left absolute bliss that just did the right thing in every moment for no reason, for no personal gain, and that people, you know, recognized as different than a typical experience, but they felt like caring for. So I would be somewhere and someone would just hand me water the moment before I could recognize that I was thirsty, and life takes care of itself. So that's basically how it came to be.
Wow, what a story. Yeah. Well, let's go a little deeper into it. So you say life played itself, right? It just did itself, right? Is that still your experience at this time?
Not in the same way. The interesting thing about it is in the same way that you were absolutely perfect as a baby, and then repeated conditioning and things got you to start expecting those conditionings. And I don't mean you personally, just the mind, the way the mind works. Um, some of that has come back in, but you never get to the point where you believe in the world again. You know. So there's these little things. It's kind of like a house. If you get your house, let's say for example, in a sense, I was a hoarder my whole life. All the beliefs I had ever believed were still in there. They hadn't been cleared out. And then one day I was like, done. So I cleared them all out. Well, then the mail shows up and dust settles. So there's still a, a consistent continuing to let go. Uh, it's not like a once and for all thing. But the first time I cleared it, it did last years. And then now it's like, okay, if I think the world exists at all, then it's lay down and surrender it all, and the bliss is right here. So um, so that's the nature of it, is that it's I've heard so many things hanging out with new age people and stuff is like you don't disappear, you don't turn into white light and disappear. It's it's blissful and everything happens and there's no decision process, there's no choice. Uh, and yet everything's obvious. You know when somebody's trying to trick you, but you really don't care. You love them, all you got for them is love. You don't become ignorant or unaware. It's just that everything's so obvious and life is perfect and there's nothing to do about it. It's like a creek flowing through. It doesn't realize it's doing anything. It's just being itself. But the grasses and trees and things around it are benefiting from that, but it doesn't. It's not doing it for that. It's just being itself, just going through the world, and spirits like that. There is no external purpose. It's not trying to benefit you or anyone. It's just its nature to be this way, and it's you. It's there's no there's no other, and that's the whole spiritual process is clearing all the false idols, all the sense of other. And when there's none left, then interestingly, it actually feels more personal to have no sense of self. It's just this beautiful love that's not doesn't really have an object. It's just the nature of things.
Yeah, wow. And would you like to describe such a process, how one can do that?
Well, I can describe my process, I guess. It doesn't have to be this process, of course. It just has to be sincere. I'm sure through history, different people have had a different process, but with the same principle. The principle of not holding anything between myself and truth, like nothing that I believe in that would keep me from seeing what actually is. So with me, the beginning of it is basically soothing. One thing about the nature of the mind is that you never want to take it on directly. Even when I was doing the manifesting, which was basically just affirmations, but really felt and really all the time until it's just believed. This is not like that. This is not about belief. This is about having no beliefs whatsoever. But even that had the same principle in the sense of uh, don't arouse the mind so much so that it's there to resist you. And so with letting go of things, you know, I talk with a lot of people, and I had my own experiences, and it's all pretty well the same, which is on a bad day, if something was feeling bad or whatever, that's the day when a mind tends to notice it needs to do something like let go or something like that, but it's not the time when it can do it. So if a person is feeling bad and they're like, okay, okay, wait, and they try to go into forgiveness or surrender or letting go um, directly, that's not a time when they'll be able to. But if they calm themselves, if you can imagine a small child who's upset, there's really no point having a conversation with that child about why they can't have the candy or the toy until they're no longer upset. And then what happens is you realize the kid never wanted the candy or the toy. That's just the thing they said when they really just felt separate from you and they thought they were missing love. So if you go straight to what actually works, which is the love and the soothing and the sense of safety, uh, you'll find with children, they no longer care about whatever it was they said they care about. And the subconscious mind works the same way. It can say it wants that thing in the world, or when I get that, then I'll be happy. It can say all those things. Or it can say that's wrong over there, or that's right over there. All of it shouldn't be taken literally. Like a kid who screams and says, I want a toy, I want a toy. And yet, if you give them love and kindness and comfort, they melt into that and forget they even asked for the toy. And the mind is like that. So when a thought comes up, and I haven't gotten into the process yet, I'm just giving you the background for the principle of the process. When a thought comes up, there's nothing specific about the thought that should be taken seriously at all. Just like when a kid is just throwing a tantrum. So when a thought comes up saying, "Oh, I'd be happier if I had more money, or if that person was nicer to me, or those kinds of things," just like a kid screaming, "I want a toy," there's no reason to even address it at the level of what it's saying. So no matter what the thought is, it's clear now that it doesn't come up to be considered or to be validated, and it doesn't come up to be acted on. It's coming up to be set free, and that's it. And so any thought, it's straight into treating it basically like an upset child, which is like, shh, it's okay. There's nothing you need to do right now. There's nothing you need to think about. It's okay. Until the thought is calmed. And then I go into actually setting it free once it's truly calm. And the setting it free is setting it free of me. The belief that someone is, that your mind has a hold of you is not actually what's happening. It turns out that once I set a thought free of me, I don't also have to ask it to set me free because it was never holding me. These were just things that I wasn't able to process or made misunderstandings of, mostly through childhood and then just repeated through adulthood. Um, but they never even wanted to exist. Just like me, all they want is the bliss, the oneness, the nothingness. of actual direct experience of life. And so they don't want to be validated or believed in. They don't come up for that. The kid screaming, I want a toy, doesn't want a toy. The kid wants love, wants to feel safe. And so the thoughts are the same. So I calm them and then I set them free of me so that they are free. So you see through the process, I'm not trying to get me free. I'm setting free all the things I was holding. And so for me, I usually go into something like, and I'll do this one thought at a time. There's no group dismissal. And this isn't a dismissal at all. It's actually a bringing closer and a loving into nothingness rather than a shooing away. And so just like a small child is upset, bring it in closer. And I'll go through something like, and it doesn't matter if you do this at all because only the feeling matters. This is just a process continuing to calm my mind into the state of the moment of actually letting go. So the words don't matter and any of that doesn't matter. But I'll go into something like, with one particular thought, you are free to be yourself, whatever you are. I have no shoulds for you, no shouldn'ts. Whatever you are, and I don't know what you are, you're free to be yourself, whatever that is. And I'm free to be myself, whatever that is, and I don't know what that is either. And right here and now in this field of unconditional, unattached universal love that simply is, that I am, that you are, that is, you're free to be yourself. And I accept you, whatever you are. And I don't even know what you are, but you already have my acceptance and I approve of you, whatever you are, it, whatever you are, you're free to be that, no matter what. And then I feel love, and it's like I recognize that what I'm looking at is love, and whatever I previously thought it has nothing to do with this thing. It's free to be itself, whatever it is. And that's the nature of the surrender, is that I'm no longer holding this thing to be what I thought it was. That definition of it is not on it anymore. So with me, at least, it's free to be itself, whatever it is. And yet it has my total acceptance and approval prior to knowing what it is and without ever defining it. And this is the surrender. It's not surrender to spirit. It's just surrender of everything that I had previously kept between me and spirit, all the ways in which my mind had tried to tell spirit what to be rather than let spirit be what it is to me. And so when I go through this process with one particular thought, it could be somebody, and there's no reason to organize or figure out which thought to let go of or what order, because they come up when they're ready. When any particular thought is ready to be let go of, it comes up as a thought. And when the mind is clear that thoughts aren't coming up to be thought about or to be contemplated or rationalized or validated or acted on, that they're only coming up to be loved and set free. Excuse me. Then then when any thought comes up, that's all, that's my only assumption, is that's what it's there for. One analogy I sometimes use, excuse me. One analogy I sometimes use is, imagine that you are in a room full of orphans who had felt neglected and misunderstood and unloved, and you were there beaming love. You can't go grab them. They're timid, they're afraid. They don't believe you. They don't trust you yet. But as you just sit there being love, one of them will come up to you and timidly and see if you're a safe place. And thoughts are like that. And so if this child comes up to you and to see if you're going to, believe what they say or if you're going to be able to see through it and see what they truly need. And so if a child comes up to you and all you do is give that child love, no matter what they're saying they think they need, you give them love and comfort and safety and then freedom to be themselves, then the other children are watching this. And as you stay with the one and bring it all the way to bliss, now there's the two of you sitting there in bliss. And then another one will feel safe enough. And the thoughts are like that, where there's no reason to try and figure out what order to set them free or even to make lists or anything like that. As long as all you're going to do when a thought comes up is set it free of you in love, then they will come when they are ready, when they feel like, okay, this is truly happening. This is an actual safe place for me to be absolved, to blissfully be nothing and therefore experience oneness. And so you can just sit there and there's no particular order to it, but it is one at a time all the way free. It's not like spinning a bunch of plates getting them all a little bit better. It's just take one and master the ability to truly set something free of you and to not just replace it with another thought or a positive thought or a so-called spiritual or religious thought, but to actually have nothing in that space, just freedom and love. That's all that's there. And then go, well, ultimately, I laid down on the floor for about a month and a half and cleared an entire lifetime. Well, uh, a 20, how old was I at that point? 29-year-old's lifetime, 30-year-old's lifetime. So, but a harsh, rough lifetime. And so that's it. And then life takes care of itself. And it's so harmonious and perfect. It certainly doesn't need direction or uh, definition or anything like that. All those things are just ways of not experiencing it as it truly is. But as it truly is, which of course is the real you, your true nature, is absolutely perfect already, absolutely harmonious already, absolutely beautiful, love, and it does have an expression. It's not neutral. It's not a thing that's just waiting to be directed. It has a nature, I mean, you see it in nature actually itself. Flowers just bloom because they do. That's just the expression they have, and love is like that. And so that's basically it, is clearing one at a time every thought, belief, meaning, opinion, fact. Interestingly, you can clear everything you think you know about math and you become better at math. So if someone had like a resistance to math because they had a bad experience in childhood with a math teacher or something, and then in adulthood they might find that they don't really have that skill. But if they clear all of it, all of a sudden they have abilities they didn't have before, effectively, because all those abilities were repressed by the feelings they had about math. And so you clear all that and you realize that kid who failed math all those years was in the room and their mind did pick it all up and their nature is to be able to do it as soon as the blocks are gone. And the rest of it is that way too. Like everything in life, you suddenly have abilities you can't claim to have earned or created. They're just there. And that's just the nature of it. You know things for no reason. And when talking with people, you use an analogy that they end up saying, "Oh my God, that's like me." And it's like, well, I used a different analogy with someone else, and they said that's like me. So there's just an easy knowing walking around and nothing to do about it. Of course, you end up with no ambition and no goals, but that doesn't matter because you have also no sense of separation and no needs. So it's this pure, beautiful expression, not for any reason whatsoever. It's like the difference between commercial art and true art. True art is compelled. The person has no choice but to express that way. Whereas commercial art is for some reason. And so life is like that, where it's just compelled. It's this beautiful expression that just doesn't feel like it has a choice otherwise. It's expressing its nature. And it does. It does automatically as soon as there isn't a mind full of concepts that's too tied up in its own concepts to let spirit be itself.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. That's so beautiful. Yeah, maybe someone would like to ask a question or comment at this point. Just raise your hand if you want to. Okay, then we'll continue on. So, are you encountering other people who are having this same experience, or how is that?
Well, it's an interesting thing. People tend to come to me when they want to die, uh, not physically, although sometimes their minds think that. But it's kind of actually like the orphans or like the thoughts when someone wants absolution or for that matter, needs it, where there's nowhere else to go, because people don't usually give up what they think is their life while they still think they can make it work or while they still want something from the world. Uh, so interestingly, there's a big correlation between essentially ego suicide, which is letting go, and the feelings of maybe physical suicide's the answer. Obviously, it's not. The body is completely innocent. It's only expressing the contents of the mind if there are contents in the mind, or it expresses spirit if there are no contents of the mind and spirit's allowed to freely express in that place. So the body is purely innocent. It's of itself. It's making no decisions. It's not doing anything. If you don't like what's happening there, then don't look to the body and blame it. Look to the contents of the mind, because the body is just expressing those. So yes, when there are people who are able to experience this, uh, when it means enough to them, it's like anything. You can go to baseball practice throughout your entire childhood, but if it never meant anything to you, you don't get very good at it. Like if it didn't really mean, like if you're going there for some other reason. I've seen people go to personal development classes because their spouse did, and the one who goes because the other one did doesn't get anything from it. They're the exact same class that's changing somebody's life, but it doesn't get you unless you went there because you wanted to go there. And surrender's like that. It has to be so pure and so sincere. The letting go is actually letting go. It's not saying I let go, It's it's actually letting go. It's actually having no protection for your life, no direction, no control. Now, all of those things are illusions anyway, because you never had any control. But letting go of the illusion of control takes a person who's essentially done with the previous experience. But if they're truly done with the previous experience, then it's like, okay, cool, perfect. Now, leave the innocent body alone and let's clear the thing that's actually bothering you, which is the contents of your mind. And let's not try to improve them. An interesting thing happens when someone, and I'll use suicide as an analogy, and it's just an analogy, in the same way that I use like the orphans as an analogy. But suicide as an analogy, one thing that people don't understand about suicide is that the person who actually is going to commit suicide is not doing it because of the promise of a better life afterwards. They're actually doing it because they are done with the life they have. And interestingly, that is very close to what happens in true spirituality, the ones who truly let go. It's the promise of love and bliss and things. That's nice, but the one who's truly going to let go is the one who no longer values what they're letting go of. And that's, if you wonder why sometimes life appears harsh to some people, it's the one lesson in all of life is this isn't it. The lesson was never how to get on in a world that it has these issues. The lesson is it isn't what you think it is. That this isn't it, you know. And when this hurts enough, you'll set it down. And so, typically, the ones who are actually able to do something with this, to truly surrender, are the ones who are not still trying to improve their life. They're willing to surrender their life to experience actual life. Um, so I guess your question was, are there other people that experience this? And the answer is yes. And of course, there are many throughout history. And um, it's basically a person who was done with life, but felt no need to kill the body and could somehow see the difference that the body is purely innocent. It's just that the mind full of beliefs and meanings and all the things that it picked up in its childhood and that just cannot be satisfactorily applied to life. Um, and it can't take that anymore. That it hurts enough, it's like holding on to a burning hot pan. When it's enough, you let it go. And for the people who are ready to let it go, it doesn't take that much instruction. It didn't take me that much instruction when the person was showing how to actually clear a thought for me to go home and just figure out how to do it myself because it meant everything to me because there was nothing else I wanted in the world. And when that's the case, there's a humbling that happens when it's truly okay. How does this done? Which is different than when the mind still kind of wants something, still kind of thinks it can figure this out, still kind of thinks it can stay in control, but get the benefits of spirituality. But when it's truly, absolutely letting go, and for no reason, just letting go, not to get anything, not even looking for relief really, although it is profoundly relieving, but not even looking for relief really, just done, just completely no belief whatsoever that anything in the world can make you happy, because truly nothing can. The actual satisfaction, the fulfillment, only comes in the complete emptiness of the false sense of self, because the dissatisfaction only comes with the contents of the false self. So there's no way in which a mind full of concepts about itself and about the world, there's no way to make that mind feel at peace and fulfilled. Uh, Not even with total positivity, and not even with that mind getting everything it wants and being treated well by people. Because that's what I got when I the same willingness to let go I had also previously brought to the willingness to change everything from negative to positive. And I got to the point where everyone was treating me well. I got everything I wanted without having to ask. And, you know, it's nothing. It doesn't satisfy the need for truth, the need for sincere, absolute freedom and love. Getting what you want won't satisfy that. Uh, Having no wants is the satisfaction, not getting what you think you want. And so clearing the thing that has wants, the thing that is dissatisfied, clearing that rather than trying to satisfy that actually brings uh, the satisfaction, the fulfillment.
I think we have a question. Go ahead. We don't? Okay, then let's continue.
All right.
Yeah, so you just explained there's other people who are experiencing this, and the people who are ready for that usually turn up on your doorstep, if I understood you right.
Well, they don't need to, though. I mean, I'm not the only person in the world that has had this experience. And if somebody was on a desert island by themselves and became ready uh, by whatever process, they could find it themselves. I mean, I took that class that was about actually clearing things, not just, uh, it was about unprogramming rather than reprogramming. It wasn't just making things positive or putting a spiritual spin on them or anything like that. It was truly about getting to the point where there used to be a thought, there's now nothing. I took that class, but I really had to go and figure it out for myself anyway. I mean, someone who's had the experience, it's like being in a dark room. They can explain perfectly where the light switch is, but you still have to feel around until you find it, which means you still have to care to feel around until you find it, you know? Um, and it might seem for a moment that the instructions are incorrect, but it's like it's right there. It's, feel around until you find the light switch. And then when you find it, you find your own way of doing it. But um, so yes, so some people find me, but other people are doing it on their own, and other people are, you know, coming to it in other ways. What it all has in common, though, is the sincerity of it. The absolute willingness to literally die if that's the case, and then it turns out it isn't. But to in no way protect or promote or save the sense of self that was there. That's it's not a repurposing of the ego. It's a complete, I guess in Course in Miracles they'd call forgiveness, a complete surrender, a complete letting go of absolutely all of it. Uh, Even there's nothing held back even to feed yourself. There's, uh, it, and it's not because of the promise of good things to come. Obviously, it's the nature of life, God, however you want to say it, is absolute harmonious perfection. It's beautiful. And it's self-sustaining. It takes care of itself and it's self-expressive. It's perfect. And that even that as a belief is not enough to get someone to let go. So so then life has to be in such a way that the person comes to the willingness of letting go. And that doesn't require a teacher. So somewhere, somebody with no teacher, no training, no guru, no nothing, can find the same truth as long as they find the same moment of willingness to let it all go. And then let it all go, not in a get rid of it type of an attitude, but in a letting it go of me, letting the humility, the humbleness of realizing that literally not a single thing I ever thought was true, that there's no such thing as a true thought. To really be so humble as to realize that I'm not correct about anything, not even about existence, not even about gravity, nothing. There's nothing, there's no place where it's better to have my belief than to have truth. And so the level of willingness that comes with humility to truly let go doesn't require a teacher, So, like, I can't do anything to make somebody ready. If somebody is ready, I can keep pointing, I can keep telling them where the light switch is in the dark room. The person who's ready will actually hear me, though they don't need me, because they were all, they're already willing to look for it. But so I can help someone along who's sincere, who's like, I get it. I get that literally nothing I think is true. How do I clear these things? I can help that person, but they're going to do it themselves. They're going to find the light switch themselves. They're going to set the things free of themselves. They're going to do that themselves. Uh, it's not a type of thing where somebody touches you on the forehead with a red dot and that does anything for you. If if life has made you ready and humble and by whatever means, whether it was harsh or whether it was nice enough but still something didn't feel right to you, by whatever means you see through the thing and say, no, that can't be it. It can't be it because it's not fulfilling, because it doesn't feel right, because it's not completely blissfully satisfying. So that can't be it. By whatever means that you see through the thing and then realize that, for example, spirit has never left you. It's just that the experience of a mind full of beliefs, every one of those beliefs is a false idol. Every one of those beliefs is something keeping you from experiencing in that same place uh, truth itself. So, so yeah, I mean, anybody can experience it, just like any hoarder at any moment can realize that it's okay to let everything go and then clean their house and then realize there was never anything wrong with the house. It was uncomfortable all those years because it was full of stuff, but the house itself was perfect. And when you clear it, you get to experience the perfection that was always there.
Yeah, that's very powerful. You were also speaking of the analogy of suicide as being one of the ways that people recognize that they need to let go of what they believe about the world, right?
Well, the people who don't still cling to the belief of themselves, I mean, the ones who actually commit suicide just didn't see the difference between body and mind. Um, but their feeling was actually correct. That's why when I meet someone who's suicidal, I don't try to get them back to the world. I don't bother telling them it'll be okay because they already know it won't. They're very clear on that, and they're correct on that. So when if you imagine the world full of minds full of stuff, so when I like for example, if I use the word ego, I'm just referring to a particular collection of concepts. In itself, it's nothing. It's like a herd of cows. What is herd? It just means a group of. So an ego is just a group of concepts. So if you have a world full of all these little groups, individual groupings of concepts, a world full of egos, and those people are trying to tell a suicidal person it'll be okay, come back to us, but the person has moved on. They've already realized that there is nothing in that world that's going to feel right. and they're correct about that. So, in a sense, the feelings of suicide or of quitting on life are actually feelings going towards the truth. Because when you realize that everything you've ever thought is untrue, and not the suicidal people haven't necessarily realized that. They actually believe their thoughts. That's why it feels bad. That's why they feel suicidal. But the inclination towards it, the inclination towards ending this, is actually a spiritual inclination. It's a realization of this thing must end. Now, whether they go towards spirituality or towards actual uh, ending the body is a matter of whether they can somehow, have some experience, which doesn't require anyone else. Just on their own, they could even have an experience that somehow shows them, wait a second, there's a difference between the body itself and it's actually the thoughts in my mind that are bothering me. Not even necessarily how my spouse treats me, not even necessarily how my family treats me or my financial position or any of that. It's actually my own mind that's bugging me. And if they can figure that out, then that inclination towards this must end actually just rolls straight into spirituality, straight into, oh, okay, then let me deal with that. Let me bring about the end of my particular collection of concepts, my ego. Let me bring about the end of that and leave the innocent body alone. But see, it usually shows up first as feelings of, I can't take this anymore, or this must end, or something like that. And then somehow there's a little crack in the full belief in what that is. The little separation from the illusion of separation. Because the nature of thought is that you inherently feel separate from whatever you think about. The term about, like in mathematics, literally means outside of. So whatever you think about, you feel separate from. And it doesn't really matter whether you think positively or negatively about something. To think about anything is to feel separate from it. And for the people that are sensitive in that way, feeling separate from things is anguish. It's too painful to deal with. And so they come to, I can't take this anymore. Uh, but somehow, some people have a little break in that illusion of separation that is inherent to having thoughts about things. Somehow have a little break and can just see it from the side and be like, oh, if I didn't have thoughts about things, I wouldn't feel separate from them. And just that realization that literally the only problem anyone has is the illusion of separation that's inherent to thought, to thinking about things, and then start letting them go. And once you are clear that that's all you're willing to do about life, and that you're not willing to try and protect yourself or promote yourself, or and you no longer believe that getting anything, not even getting other people to treat you better, will make you happy, when it has to be the real thing, then then you realize what the real problem is and you put that together and you understand, okay, the only actual problem is that to think about things is to inherently feel separate from them, plus the thoughts are inherently wrong. There's no such thing as a true thought, so because the thought is never the thing itself. So even the most seemingly spot on definition of something is still not the thing itself. So the thought about it keeps a person from directly experiencing the thing itself. And so, seeing those two things where it's like, okay, no such thing as a true thought, and my only dissatisfaction with all of life is that I feel fundamentally separate from it. I even feel separate from the things I own, own as a concept. I even feel separate from the things I have positive thoughts about. To see a beautiful waterfall and then to have my mind overlay that with its concept of beauty and say, oh, what a beautiful waterfall. I might as well be looking at a postcard of a beautiful waterfall because I'm not seeing the thing itself in that moment. If I'm if I need to put my concepts there, you know, to see a particular tree, but then have my concept of all trees kind of between me and it, then I'm not really able to commune and actually have a direct oneness experience with that tree. But I clear all of it, and I can look at a tree, and it's this really present, beautiful, this tree, amazing experience, just because there isn't a definition of tree between me and it. And that's the nature of oneness, is that it's not an accumulation, it's not a thing you get to, it's a thing you uncover. You take away all of the false idols, all of the definitions, all of the beliefs, all the meanings that you just passively picked up along the way and you never chose anyway. They were just in the environment when you were a kid, when you had no choice. And you cleared them all. And interestingly, without them there, you feel more yourself, not less, because you're really getting down to this absolute harmonious perfection that you truly are. And so that's the solution to absolutely everything is absolution, is to have no thought about a thing and therefore experiencing the thing directly. And it's so fulfilling that there's nothing in you that also wants the thing to change. It's truly free to be itself. And because it's free to be itself, you can actually experience it as it is.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, let's see. Does anyone have a comment or a question they would like to ask? You can raise your hand and then I'll let you unmute yourself. Otherwise, we will continue. Okay, it looks like there's no comments or questions from anyone else. So. Oh, there is. Wait a second. So you just need to unmute yourself, then you can comment or ask your question.
Hi, Wanako. Hi, Evan.
Hello.
My
Hi.
question,
Hi.
like you always say, Evan, you always say to lovingly. First of all, I missed I was at the dentist and I missed the whole thing until I just came. So I don't know what you were saying earlier, but if you could just explain a little bit to how to get rid of thoughts lovingly, like you say, just what is that method where you just let each thought go, and how can you work on each thought? There's probably many, and it just doesn't. I mean, I'm trying, but I just don't understand what the method is. I mean, I don't know if I can. Um,
Sure.
if I can do it, how it's done. How is it done? You know.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I should have been here earlier, and yeah.
Oh, no, you're fine. The whole thing's recorded anyway. So, but it sounds
Yeah,
like
but
maybe
I'm
you've
glad.
read things I've written before anyway. Is that
I
true?
have. I have.
Who
I
is this?
read yeah. I read all your stuff, of course.
What's your name?
And George,
George. Okay.
George Germain.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah. Yeah. I've seen you on there. Um, yeah. I had a friend Fletch who had a similar question, which was, aren't there infinite? Wouldn't this take forever? And I'll give you an analogy for that. Let's say, how old are you, George?
65.
65. Let's say for
Yeah.
65 years, every time
Uh-huh.
the junk mail came to the house, you came in and set it on the counter, and you never
Uh-huh.
threw it away and you never got rid of it. And you also
Okay.
never even questioned it. For 65
Uh-huh.
years, every time junk mail came to the house, you set it down somewhere. And now
Uh-huh.
at 65 years old, you feel like the house is kind of an uncomfortable place to be
Uh-huh.
because there's just stacks everywhere. There's no comfortable place to sit. It's taken
Uh-huh.
65 years to accumulate that much absolutely useless stuff
Uh-huh.
Now you come to the moment where somehow you realize, because you've had thoughts maybe of, maybe I should sell the house. Maybe I need a different house. Maybe there's something wrong with the house. I'm not comfortable here.
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
somehow you have this break, this moment, and you realize, you know what? There was a time this house was comfortable. I don't think the problem is the house. I think the problem is all the junk in the house. And for whatever reason, for 65 years, you've never cleared anything, but today you're willing. How long will it take you to clear out, and let's stay with the analogy, how long would it take to clear out a physical house that has 65 years worth of junk mail in it? It doesn't take 65 years,
No, no, it doesn't.
right?
Right.
So let's say you have to do it all yourself. And let's say you can only do one piece of mail at a time, but nothing else matters to you. So every
Mm-hmm.
waking moment, all you're doing is taking one piece and walking it all the way out to the curb and putting it in the recycling bin, and then back in the house. And as you're walking back to the house, you feel just a little bit lighter because that's one less piece of mail in your house, one less piece of junk mail, which never had any value whatsoever to you, truly. And then you go back in the house, and then you get one piece, and you walk it out to the recycling bin at the curb, and you lovingly set it in there. Each time as you walk back to the house, you feel lighter and lighter and freer and freer. And even when it's just a small amount you've let go of, you already feel more comfortable in the house, the same house you had for 65 years. And as you keep going, even at that pace, even just one at a time, if it's all that matters to you and it's all you're doing, and you're doing each one lovingly and presently, bring it all the way out to the curb, not partially, and then there's a pile on the lawn, just all the way out to absolution, each one. Couple of months, if it even one at a time, even 65 years worth
Mm-hmm.
of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And in a couple of months, you have this absolutely perfect house that you can now see there was never anything wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the nature of it, as far as the question of aren't there so many that it would be.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
now imagine you tried to pick them all up at once and take them to the curb. You might think that's faster, but it truly just never happens.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense as an analogy?
It makes sense, Evan, except that I have a couple of problems. One is the part where truly nothing else matters. That might be a problem, but my bigger
Well, that is
problem,
a problem, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm not quite sure about where that is, but my my biggest problem is how what is the technique of what do? You talk, you address belief. You say, okay, I don't believe you, you're not serving me, how do you lovingly discard it? How do you deal with it, talk to it, whatever you need to do with it, you know is it
Well, here's the thing. I'm happy to answer that question, and you've said a couple of things that are going to keep you from being able to do this if you
Mhm.
insist on believing them.
Mhm.
Um, so you're not trying to get rid of these things. Once you realize the nature of how this works, and we did talk about this earlier in the show, but that's okay because
Mhm.
repetition is
Sorry
generally how this becomes clearer
for
and
me.
clearer.
Yeah.
Well, for anyone,
Uh-huh.
um, but you're setting it free of you. So it isn't about whether it's not getting rid of things that no longer serve you. I'm familiar with that concept in, sort of new age spirituality, but that whole entire thing about this is the year I'm getting rid of the things that no longer serve me still implies that the entire purpose is to serve you. And as long as the entire purpose is to serve you, you're not getting anywhere near truth. You're not getting anywhere near oneness
Mhm.
or love or God or anything.
Mhm.
Because what it is that you give up lovingly, willingly, to experience total fulfillment and bliss and oneness is the self that statement is wondering about things serving. So that self is entirely made up of dissatisfying thoughts about things. So it's not about trying to serve a thing that is funnily made of dissatisfaction. It's about clearing, setting free the things that you're holding that cannot ever be satisfied. We talked earlier on this program about
I need to review
that
it.
it's not about yeah, I know I totally don't mind going over it, because that's what we do, and that's how it works, but the way it's not about getting what you want. That will not satisfy ever, because you not being your true self and then trying to get your false self to get what it wants, there's no satisfaction. It just absolutely, and this is one of the humbling things to come to then be willing to do this process, or any process that actually works, of letting go, is to realize that there is no way at all to be at peace, fulfilled, while still having a mind full of beliefs. It's just the beliefs are the dissatisfaction. The beliefs themselves make you feel separate from everything you believe. And that feeling of separation, that feeling of separation is the thing that makes you want things to be different than they are, or better, or kinder, or something. So instead of trying to take them and give them what they say they want, you simply clear the thing that's causing the dissatisfaction. And that's absolution. Absolution is not solving a problem. It's getting rid of the problem. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I think what I did was I asked the question wrong, and also I don't remember the method. Let's I don't know what it's called.
Well, no, you asked the
it.
question,
But
you asked the question perfectly. It's just that the way you asked the question gave away your position.
Right, right. Probably did, yeah.
And what I'm sharing with you is that position won't do what I would share with you to do.
Right.
So you can't hold that position, and no matter how well I explain this, if you hold that position, you simply won't do it. You might even believe it, but believing it is of no use. If somebody memorized and brainwashed themselves to believe everything that I'm saying, it wouldn't solve the problem. The solution is to have no beliefs whatsoever, not just to have more spiritual or better beliefs or anything like that.
No, I'm pretty clear on all that. Yeah. I just don't know how I'm lovingly to I don't know what you always call it. You say lovingly you get rid of them, get rid of your beliefs. Loving.
See, you're exposing yourself again.
Yeah, I could probably learn. I will probably learn something just by listening to myself.
Well, no, it's perfect. It's perfect because bringing those kinds of things out of yourself and then looking at them is how they get cleared. So it's perfect that you're saying it exactly the way you're saying it, so that you can see it. So that the first thing that you can address is exactly that. If you think they are holding you, then you want to get rid of them, but you can't. If you become clear that you are holding them, then it's simply a matter of you setting them free. And it turns out that that's actually what happens, because as soon as you set them free, that's it. There's nothing there. You don't also have to ask them to set you free. And so the The feeling, of course, is typical, and it makes sense. The idea that, like, I'm this thing, and then I got these other things on me. If I could get them off me, I would feel better. So I get the feeling. It's just technically not correct, and as long as you feel that way,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
So so the first thing is to humble and realize they're not holding you. You're holding them.
Mm-hmm.
So, if it feels like that cat is clawing you, then let let it go. Stop
Mm-hmm.
stop holding it. Um, and that's something that happens first, before you're able to let anything go, is to be interested in the absolute truth, and then that humble, okay, I'm not going to believe what I think about this. Show me the truth. What is the truth? And you can just say this to nothingness too. You can say it in your own mind, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I I don't know anything that's true. How do I do this? And then you wouldn't even need to ask me or anyone else. You could literally just
Mm-hmm.
sit in the dark and humbly, very clearly say, I don't know how to do this. How do I do this? How do I let go? How do I, where is freedom? And then you would be able to find all this stuff all by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a
Okay.
thing where you have to be special in any way to have it. It's just a thing where you don't get to hold your things and to get this, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So as far
That
as the
helps.
process, though, basically, and you'll hear it earlier on this recording as well, but
Okay.
as far as the process, basically soothe your mind so that it's not also running while you're trying to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So relax it, make it feel safe, let it know that there's nothing it needs to do right now, and there's nothing that it needs to think about, and it can just relax. And you can even it's okay. It's okay. There's nothing you need to think about right now. There's nothing you need to do. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing I need to think about. There's nothing I need to do. Shh, it's okay. Until the mind is calm enough to even let do this. Um, and then it literally has to be one at a time, but one at a time is actually faster because it actually happens. Whereas more than one at a time just never happens. So then you can take anything.
Mm-hmm.
The I remember one time I was at a restaurant, and this was early in this process, so I was kind of right in the middle of it. And I looked down and I saw a spoon, and the spoon was placed in front of me, and how quickly the mind says that's my spoon, and how odd it would be if somebody else grabbed it. Now, meanwhile, I'm at a restaurant, clearly not my spoon. It's the restaurant spoon. But the mind goes to possession and such things that quickly. Because you're not just clearing positive and negative thoughts, you're also clearing thoughts of ownership, possession, obligation, all of it. And so I saw the spoon, and I realized that my mind thought that was my spoon. And so I'm in this busy restaurant, and I start loving this spoon and setting it free of me, because it was my mind's concept of ownership, in my experience anyway, dominating this innocent spoon, telling it what it had to be to me. And you see all the arrogance in that, the and then that level of arrogance, and then wonder why I was walking through the world feeling separate from everything, because I was telling everything what to be rather than seeing what it is. And so I'm looking at this spoon in this busy restaurant, and I just go into, you're free to be yourself. I have no shoulds for you. I don't even know what you are. Whatever you are, you're free to be yourself, and that type of thing. And just talking myself through setting this spoon free of me, basically humbling myself in the presence of this spoon, where to me, I'm not here to tell that spoon what to be, and letting it be whatever it is. And once I set it free, I was in bliss. I'm in this restaurant in bliss looking at a spoon, feeling absolute oneness and love. And at that point, if someone had come and taken the spoon or anything, I wouldn't have had a no, my spoon type of reaction. It would have been the most perfect thing happening because that's the nature of it. And of course, because perfection happens, nobody did that. So I used the spoon and I ate my food. And so the process in general is realizing that the only thing bugging me was the feeling of separation from absolutely everything. And the illusion of control didn't make up for the pain of the illusion of separation. And so, fortunately, they both come and go at the same time. As soon as I have a thought about a thing, that thought is me trying to tell the thing what to be. It's already a control issue. Immediately I feel separate from the thing. So along the way, and this gets back to saying, how does that serve me, and so on and so forth, is you give up control, absolutely, give up control. And because you're willing to give up control, you get to give up separation because the two come and go together. They come with conceptualization. But now you're interested in actualization. And actualization is simply the absence of conceptualization. So when you no longer hold a definition to a thing, no longer make it live out a principle that you believe in, and now it's free, you have no control over it now. And you have no illusion of separation from it now. And so you get to experience this blissful oneness of a thing that's free to be itself with you. And when you do that with absolutely every single thing that you believe in your mind, every place where you're trying to dominate the world, every place where you're trying to tell it what to be. Now, meanwhile, the things that your mind is trying to tell it what to be, you never even chose those things. Those are just the ones you picked up in childhood. Those are just the ones you picked up in life from other people who aren't happy. So however personal they seem to you, however important they might seem to you, they're totally impersonal. You didn't choose them, and the people who gave them to you didn't choose them, and the people who gave them to them didn't choose them. It's just this completely impersonal, incorrect, untrue thing, passing through generations. And now it hurts. It hurts to feel separate from everything. And the grasping at attempting to control the things isn't enough. It's not enough to get rid of the pain of separation. So you become humble, you become willing to give up the illusion of control because that also allows you to give up the illusion of separation. And it really just comes down to that you take whatever definitions your life experience has had you accumulate, you take those off of each thing one at a time, If you had 10 children that felt neglected by you, and then you said, "Hey, I love you all," that it doesn't mean that much to each one. You got to take each one and show it that you love it, and show it that it's free to be itself with you, and that you're not going to tell it what to be. That you're more interested in seeing what it is than in telling it what to be. And when you do, that one will be calm and happy and at peace. And that's the nature of what you're doing with the mind, is taking all of its accumulated opinions, basically, concepts, definitions, everything, even the concept of gravity, setting it all free of you. And each one of those things individually is free to be itself with you, whatever it is. And you're clear that you don't know what it is. You know, it's not, hey kid, you're free to be yourself as long as you act like I think you should. It's, you know what? You are absolutely free to be yourself. Go ahead and be yourself. Just show me what you are. And so the attitude of that is more important than any process. It's the sincerity of truly letting a thing be itself rather than telling it what it is. And having no control over it, but you've had control for 65 years. It's not that satisfying, you know? And by control, I mean like you might feel like you don't have control over the political process in the world or something. But the mind thinks it has control because it has opinions about the political process in the world. And so that's the way in which it's trying to control it. It's like, oh, I like that. I don't like that. And, uh, but free of all that, to have no opinion whatsoever about it, where it's all free to be itself, whatever it is. That's where the separation disappears. And as soon as the separation disappears, you no longer feel dissatisfied. Excuse me. And you no longer feel uncomfortable. You feel totally oneness in that bliss. And then you don't want anything to be, you don't want to tell anything what it is. You'd rather experience, you'd rather be a place where God is free to be itself than a place where you're telling it what to be. And that's where the freedom is, and that's where the bliss is, and that's where the oneness is, and that's heaven here now while the body still lives. Did you notice
Thank
I
you
didn't
so
totally answer
much.
your question? And the reason that and the reason is um, that ultimately you're going to come up with your own little process, and the process isn't the thing itself. The process is how you calm your own mind into letting go. And so you're welcome to start with mine, but it's not important. The words aren't important. The sincerity is important. You know, the being with one thing totally and setting it free of you, and in no way trying to make it set you free. Like it's not like it's telling someone you love them and then just being like, so are you going to tell me? It's not that. It's truly, truly loving someone. So much so that you don't even need them to say it back. It's that sincere. And then you realize through direct experience that completely cleared it. So you never did have to ask it to set you free because it was never holding you. You were holding it. So yeah. So the process is not that important, but the sincerity is everything.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, there's a lot to to let process, right? To let open up in us, so that we can actually accept this in ourselves.
Is George gone? This is one?
I'm the one speaking. I just
Okay.
he's not gone. He's still here.
Oh, okay. Great. Okay. So yeah. One thing, if you're okay with me pointing out something to you, is that okay?
Sure, go
Oh,
ahead.
actually, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Is it Wanako, or how do you pronounce your name?
Wanako.
Wanako. Um, I noticed just there because I see a lot of these things, and I was actually just talking with another friend about it this morning. One of the things to notice with the mind is when it uses the word we and when it uses the word I. And interestingly, the connection and oneness are not the same thing. So a lot of times what the mind will go to rather than oneness, as it's trying to still sort of stay there, but make things better. And this is the urge to like improve the world and so on and so forth, rather than to actually see the world that truly is. The to improve the world or something is still that need to have the thinking mind, the ego, if you will, continue to be the false sense of self, but make the world more acceptable to it. And an interesting way that it lets itself known that it's still there is when it says we instead of I. Because interestingly, to get to oneness, it's more about I. It's I surrender, um, as opposed to we. Uh, and I know this is a program, and obviously there are people listening, but it's an interesting thing to point out, if it's okay to point it out with you, is that you said we, but if you take the exact same sentences and you say I, you notice that you feel them more, and now you have to address them. My friend I was talking with this morning sent me, which actually a Course in Miracles quote, and he said we, and in what he was writing, and so I just asked him, can you say that again with I? Because a lot of the times the we is just a way of not really touching it, not really addressing it. Whereas looking at, so if someone says, well, we have a lot of work to do you see how that sort of, in a way, says, well, we all have the same problem, therefore none of us really need to address it. But if someone says, I have a lot of work to do, still not entirely true because you're absolute perfection already, but it makes the mind actually look at the thing that's being said. Is that okay that I shared that with you?
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful thing, when we say we, we're trying to include everyone, right? And when we're saying I, we are addressing our own issues with it, which is wonderful.
Right,
So
which is
yes,
exactly the point, is the we, interestingly, is actually a concept of separation.
true, because there's only one, right? Yeah,
Well, and it actually is a way that the mind is using to avoid actually looking directly at something, because ultimately, to get to the actual direct experience, it's totally personal. It's totally one person by themselves doing it, and there's no group aspect to that. I the reason I point that out is that it's very prevalent in New Age spirituality communities to say we, but when someone's truly ready, when it's time to let go, then even the we becomes a concept of, clear that it's a concept of separation. Another similar one is the concept of surrendering to God, as opposed to surrendering the things that you've put up between you and God. Because it isn't surrendering to God. The whole surrendering to God still implies that you are what you think you are, and that God is this separate thing. Excuse me. But surrendering everything, not to anyone, because it's absolution. The things don't actually exist. They never did. So surrendering everything, all the false idols, is not really surrendering them to God. It's just surrendering them such that God is all that's left. And these little subtleties can sometimes seem like, okay, now you're just picking on words, but it's the subtleties belie what's going on in the mind, and it actually, to really feel it, it's not we as a spiritual community need to, or we as a world community need to. That's just not what happens when it's time. When it's time, an individual surrenders, and they surrender. It's surrender of the contents of the mind, not surrender to God. It's surrender of the false idols such that there's none left. Therefore, all that truly, all that's left for that person to experience is God. And those little subtleties actually do make a difference.
that's certain that words make a difference to the way you think about things. That's what we were speaking about. Um, Lol. Podcast recording.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like when I was talking with George, and he said something about serve things that don't serve me. You can't really get past those. You know, if the mind is thinking we, as all us separate people in the world, need to find peace, then it's not thinking I'm ready for peace. You know, and because truly the world, for any individual person to experience heaven that's laid out everywhere, that's right here, does not require the world to change one bit. The it doesn't. And to be the living answer doesn't require anything at all external. If the world ever was going to be a peaceful place, it would be because a bunch of individuals surrendered what they were holding, and now they're not holding it anymore. But there's never going to be a we that does that, and that's not even if that appears to be the goal, then that's still the mind trying to change the external in such a way that the mind can continue to be full of stuff but somehow be okay. And that just never happens. There's not going to be a time when the mind contains everything it contains, but the world is good enough that it's okay.
Yeah.
Because that's
And
just
of
not what
course,
the
in
world is,
miracles,
you know?
it also speaks of accepting the atonement for oneself. And it
Well,
doesn't
exactly,
speak
and
of
not for a group,
accepting it for
right?
anyone else.
Exactly. Well, exactly.
So
And
that's
that's the nature
absolutely
of
the
it.
point. Yeah.
Interestingly, that makes you actually feel closer to everyone. All the people that were included in we previously, when I surrender the things I'm holding, when I surrender, I feel oneness with the people I used to call we that I felt separate from.
Yeah, that is a powerful recognition of the experience.
Yeah.
So, any last comments or questions before I start wrapping up things with Evan? You can unmute yourselves if you want.
Hi, it's me, Елена. I am sorry that I have problem with some kind of like raising my hand is system. I don't know what's going on. It's not sure, but I very interesting to listen to you. Even it's kind of interesting ideas and very your voice is very calming. It's and nice. The way that it's make the feel peace and harmony um, and um, and also I just feel that all you're saying it's kind of that very connect with myself, that exactly what I feel, that this is my truth of the life too. So I just want to tell that how I appreciate that for your story. It's very amazing, very interesting, and it's kind of ideas about I we. It's kind of very interesting too, because I was trying to write. I doing, for example, my journaling in the morning, and I try to write instead of I we. It was it was something in I read somewhere that it's maybe I read some book probably James. I forget, but it was about that he described about that better describe that we instead of I, but the way you explained, it's kind of interesting, really interesting, and
Yeah,
maybe
I don't know
some
who particularly you're talking about
change.
as far as that book.
Yeah.
Most books, and I mean literally almost all books, are written by people who have not actually experienced what would satisfy you. And the thing about the mind, though, is that it has no ability to go into a new age or spirituality bookstore and pick between them. There's no way of the mind doing that. It will keep going to itself. The nature of the conditioned mind is that it keeps finding itself everywhere. And so if the mind was looking for an out, if it was looking for a way of not really getting to it, then it would find a book in which the person said, hey, start saying we instead of I, which is one of the ways in which the mind doesn't directly deal with things, and therefore doesn't deal with them at all, and therefore stays the way it is. So don't put too much into books. When you actually want to empty your mind, you won't need any books. You won't need any books at all. You could be on a deserted island with not a single book of any sort, and you can find truth. So you don't need any teacher. You don't need any books. It's just the moment when you realize, the humbling of realizing that nothing I think is true, and that everything I think makes me feel separate. Artificially, because you're not actually separate, but the experience of the illusion of separation is literally the only thing that's bugging anyone. And it's simply a matter of clearing the concepts. And it doesn't matter what the concepts are. There's just no such thing as a true concept. So it's going to be a personal experience for you, and it's going to be I. For example, if you were to say, we are ready for peace, you see how they're sort of out there and nebulous and not really feeling it is. But if you say, I'm ready, then you can kind of go with that and go inside and be like, okay, I'm ready. What does it take? That you don't need a group to validate or join you in it. It's never going to be, well, I'll be free when everyone is free. That's not actually how it works. It's I'll be free when my concept of everyone is free of me. So I guess I would say go back to I. I don't know what book that was, but go back to I so that you're feeling these things directly, and feeling them directly. Then at some point your mind will have to deal with them. And ultimately it'll realize that the only way to deal with them is to set them free.
I know that now what this book is James Mangan, Secret of Selling Yourself to People. And
Okay.
so,
Well, then that would explain why it's so that the self he's referring to is the ego.
yeah.
And the people he's referring to is the ego's concept of other people. And the purpose of selling is to try and get things for the ego. So that book, if you're interested in truth or oneness, that book's not going to help. But if you're if you're not ready for that and you just want to get things, then there are many ways to get things, and that could be one of them, but it won't satisfy. So The only satisfaction that anyone ever, the place you can rest, the place you can finally relax and say, now I feel right, everything feels right within, is in absolution. It's in letting everything go.
Oh, thank you very much. It's very interesting. Also, I listen some podcast, and Marisa Pierce. She's a psychology and hypnotist, and then she also told about I and we, and then she told that if it's something like if she need to get rid of something, so we can say we, that it's not that her idea that it's not important and it's can to be get rid of it. Yeah, it's really a very interesting ideas about that. I just want to study more about that. It's interesting.
Well, that's an interesting point that you point out right there. I mean, a psychologist is obviously dealing as if the thoughts, you know, are you, as if you are the thinker. But she did point out in that one that it is less personal to you to say we. So she's saying, well, let's just manage the contents of your mind rather than clear them. But she's saying in managing the contents of your mind, if you want to make something less personal to you, say we. And if you want to make it more personal, say I. For example, right now, if you were at if it was your birthday party and there's a group of friends there, and one of the friends individually came up to you and said, we all love you, or if they came up to you and said, I love you, one is less personal, one is more personal. And so with this, you're not trying to depersonalize your actual experience. You actually want to feel it, but then actually absolve it. And you don't absolve it by keeping it nebulous kind of farther away. You absolve it by having it right here and actually going right through the middle of it. And that would be why, for example, if you want to actually say something like, I can't take it anymore, would be different than we can't take it anymore. Because you would just feel it less if you said we. But if it's something that you need to feel to break you, to get you willing to let go, then stay personal with it, stay direct with it, and experience it, and then let it break you. Let it be where you can't take it anymore, where you have to let go, and feel it, as opposed to managing it by keeping it we, and therefore it's over there, and therefore I don't really need to deal with it. Make it I, and make it something you have to deal with.
Yeah, that really make sense for me because, for example, I still go into the morning journal pages, and one of technique it says that kind of describe like because kind of usually morning for everybody very it's kind of time that something need to deal with this kind of personal and for example, if I try to write something, I can describe it like Yelena feel that, so or Via feel that, and for me, it's what you're saying. It's maybe it's meaning that I not taking that personal and try to get rid of all this stuff because I don't need that. Maybe.
Well, it's
Maybe I
it's an
can
attempt at
have
going the
this.
same thing. It's just that it doesn't work. It's basically an attempt at pushing the thing away. But if you imagine the thing is your child, and the thing's having a tantrum, do you push it away? Does that really solve it long term? Or do you bring it closer and comfort it and give it love? So if you take the child who's feeling upset and unloved and neglected and unseen, because maybe for a lifetime you've been telling it what to be rather than asking the child what it is. So it's upset, it feels neglected and disregarded and talked over. And then you take that child, and instead of, maybe in this moment they're throwing a tantrum and your mind wants to push them away and say, stop doing that, and wants to control them even more. But the actual solution is to realize that it's throwing a tantrum because it was already treated poorly. Now bring it in closer and give it the love that would have, if it was present, just made the tantrum never happen. And so your mind and thoughts are the same way. It's not push them away because they're bothering you. It's bring them in and give them the love that would have caused them to never bother you in the first place.
So you're meaning by that I can write instead of Yelena feeling or we are feeling, like I feel that, and that I feel that, and that they done with me that, or just example, right? Like
I'm
or
saying if you say I, you'll feel it more. If it's something painful, feeling it more is a good first step to actually dealing with it. So whether it's a good
okay.
thing or a bad thing in your experience, if you say I, it will cause you to have to actually deal with it. If you say we or even Juliana or those kind of things, third person, then you will never really have to deal with it and it will always still be there and be an issue.
Okay, I get this. The now I see what you
So
mean.
even if it's
Okay,
painful
yeah.
to say I, say it so that you get through it,
Hmm.
so that you have to get through it, so that it's right there.
Yeah,
And then later you say
that's right.
I
Yes.
as surrender of the thing that you used to say I, as something painful, and then you surrender it, also still directly, personally, and then you set it free. And when all these things are set free, you're free. One of the analogies I sometimes use is, every day you find yourself in prison, you assume you're a prisoner, but it actually turns out you're the warden. You're the one holding all of them in prison, but you're there every day. So as soon as you set every one of those prisoners free of you, you can go home.
Oh, thank you. It's make a difference. Now I'm kind of like understand more that something that I don't know. Something give me more ideas. Maybe I
Okay.
can change something, or we'll see. Thank you.
Love something, love something, and don't tell it what to be, and see what remains.
Okay. Yes.
All right. All
Sounds
right.
good.
Thank you.
So, Evan, thank you so
Yes.
much for being here. It was
My
a
pleasure.
wonderful
Thank you.
conversation. So much content and so much to learn from this and to grow by. How can one reach you if one wants to talk with you or get any more information about you?
Well, I imagine you'll put up how to spell my name, Evan Moulton, and anybody is welcome to. I have a lot of stuff written, free to anybody on my Facebook page, Evan Moulton, so you can find me. Maybe you'll put up the exact one because I know there's other people named Evan Moulton in the world.
Yeah, if you give
And
me the link, I can put it on in the show
yeah,
notes.
yeah. So anybody is free to read all of that. There's a lot of content all the way back to when I joined Facebook in 2009 or 10 or something. And then anybody is welcome to message me through there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you once again. Thank you to everyone who has been listening or will listen. And yeah, please review the podcast on any podcast platform you're listening to it on. Spread the word so that more people hear about it and can listen to it. And till next time, bye bye.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.